All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, on this beautiful summer afternoon, and welcome to Nutrition with Elena. And we are going to talk about some summer meals today. Elena?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. So today we're going to talk about some really tasty ways to use all of this fresh summer produce that we have access to. So I'll get started by making a recipe and then we'll launch into our PowerPoint and then we'll finish up with 2 additional recipes. So the first recipe we're going to make today is grilled peaches. If you haven't grilled fruit before, this is a really great way to start playing around with it. So for our class purposes, I'm using, a plug-in grill here, and this works just fine for this recipe. I have it preheated. So what we're going to do is, I bought some peaches. You want to get ones that are firm but ripe. And what we're going to do is just kind of cut down the middle and separate out from the seed. So just do a little twist. And then we have the seed stuck inside. That seed just broke in half. And then I'm just going to kind of carve out the seed with my knife. And grilling fruit really brings out that sweetness. So like peaches are great grilled, pineapples. You can grill melons. This I really like as either a dessert or I think it's even a really nice breakfast option. So I'm going to make 2 peaches. So it'll be about 4 servings. So I'll be able to keep these in the fridge and then you can just eat them leftover. So I have that. This pit just fully stayed inside. So I'm just going to scoop it out, just carving it out with my knife. Okay. So we have our peach halves. So I'm first going to lay this down, like fruit side down on the grill. And we're going to let that cook for 3 minutes. I am going to set a timer just so we can kind of keep an eye on that. And then we'll flip it over to the other side for another 3-ish minutes. Okay. While that's going, I had some honey that I put in the microwave. I felt like this tasted really good with warmed honey, just a little bit on top. Plus my honey had become crystallized and heating it is a good way to get it liquid again. You could also just run it under hot water. Right, so I have my honey. Now, what I'm going to put this over is some Greek yogurt. So this is really great if you're looking for a Greek yogurt. This is the Giant brand. It's very inexpensive. This one's non-fat. It's real tasty. It doesn't have kind of that bite to it that some of the Greek yogurts have. So this is a really nice one. And what you can do when you're serving this is just use like a half cup of the yogurt, half of your peach, and then just a tiny drizzle of honey. I use about a 1/4 teaspoon per peach. With that, you can make it in a different way too. You could use like some whipped cream. You can serve it with some ice cream, even maybe like a little crumble with oats and brown sugar on the top. Just a really nice way to eat these. Peaches are in season right now for us in Pennsylvania and Delaware. So while they're on here, I just kind of move them around a little bit. And if you were doing something like pineapple, you could do it a similar way, like some chunks of grilled, like larger pieces of grilled pineapple and serve it over the yogurt or the ice cream to get that kind of sweet and dessert type flavor, or kind of more of a breakfast feel if you do it with the Greek yogurt. While that's going, I am going to, let's see what we'll do real quick. what we'll do is get started with talking, and then I'll take a minute to flip them. I know you can still see me even when we're talking. So I'm just gonna put this to the side. And you know what? I'm gonna flip them first before I start sharing my screen, because they're just about ready. Okay. You'll see you have some kind of the lines on the peaches, so I'm gonna flip them. We're gonna do the other side for about a minute, and then I'm going to actually close this for another minute or so. Okay, so we'll actually do this for 2 minutes, and then we'll flip it. We'll close it and let it cook on both sides. All right, let me share my screen. Great. All right, so today we're going to cover enjoying summer's bounty. We're going to talk about grilling a little bit more, food safety, which is super important in the summer months. And we're also going to talk about just kind of like quick and easy ways to eat well in the summer, just because it can get a little tricky sometimes if we're busy. We're enjoying summer's bounty. So there's so many options this time of year for local produce. And it's really nice to be able to vote with our dollars and support those local farms. If you've ever done farming or worked with farmers, you can appreciate how hard of a job it is to grow large amounts of food for people and to try to make a living off of it. So really important to support those farmers. This is a good, I know if you've been on previous classes, I think we've linked this localharvest.org. But what I love about that is we can put in our zip code and it pops up farm stands, farms that we can go to get produce, CSAs, or that community supported agriculture that farms typically run in the summertime, and also restaurants that use local food items. So let's talk about some of our very available fruits and vegetables that we have this summer. So I wanted to touch on watermelon. One of our recipes today is for watermelon, and that is, I am going to close this now for about a minute. Watermelon obviously is very high in water, right? We're all familiar with that. It's also a really good source of vitamin C. That lycopene, so that's a phytochemical that we may have heard of regarding tomatoes. But watermelon is actually a really good source of lycopene and even has more than tomatoes. There's also some research that watermelon helps in post-workout recovery, so reducing muscle soreness for people. So I think that that's pretty cool. I actually make myself, I do like one softball tournament a year with my hospital I work for, and I bring like a watermelon rehydration drink that I blend up. And last year was my first year doing it, and I was not as sore as I had been in previous years. So I do think that it does help. As far as watermelon storage, obviously, you know, getting it opened kind of close to when you buy it can really give us the best quality of fruit. If we let it sit on the counter a little too long, you know, sometimes it gets that like soft feel to it. It's not as crisp. The thing about watermelon is that it produces a lot of fruit, right? So if you're by yourself, it might be a little overwhelming to have a whole watermelon. But there are things we can do to preserve it, mostly freezing it. So you can freeze it into cubes. And then throughout the year, like you might make that drink that we're making today. You might also find that you blend it into a smoothie, or maybe make a little bit of a sorbet type of a dish. So don't be overwhelmed with like a bunch of watermelon that you're afraid is going to go bad in the fridge, because there are ways to kind of keep it and really enjoy that fresh flavor over the winter. Now, also not to be afraid of the sugar that's in watermelon. Sometimes we hear, oh, watermelon's too high in sugar, we shouldn't eat it. Well, watermelon, has some natural sugars like any fruit does, but it's also, it has all these other benefits. That water content, it's actually fairly low in calories for the volume that you might consume of it. And it has a little bit of fiber. So definitely something to bring on board into our diets, especially this time of year. All right, I'm going to pull these off of here because they are done. I'm going to grab a plate real quick. This thing does not cool down very quickly. And we can kind of see very juicy, a lot of juice coming out of the peaches. So yummy this way. So let me just, it smells so delicious. Let me just unplug this. Okay. Now we'll talk a little bit about peaches. So they are also one of our summer produce superstars. So peaches, again, high in water. So when we kind of think about how hot it is outside, right, it makes sense that all these fruits and vegetables that are available to us this time of year are very high in water. They help to hydrate us. Peaches have a lot of vitamin A and vitamin C. They have fiber, potassium. Potassium is really important for us. For most people, we are eating less potassium than we need. What our goal is by increasing fruits and vegetables is that we will increase our potassium, and then hopefully our sodium decreases if we're eating a lot of whole plant foods. So that's really the best optimal balance for our blood pressure levels. So really bringing the sodium down and the potassium up really helps with that. As far as storage and preserving peaches, we had a peach tree when we lived in North Wilmington, and I miss it ever since we moved. It produced so many peaches for us, but I found that, they do go bad pretty quickly. They can extend their life a bit if you put them in the refrigerator. But another way to just kind of keep them is to just like peel them and freeze pieces for the winter. So it's really nice to have frozen peaches in the winter. You can throw them in smoothies. You could make different like overnight oats with them, all different sorts of things that you can use, make a peach crisp, cobblers. The possibilities are endless. You could also, I know last couple classes ago, we did a shrub with peaches. So you could do something like that to kind of preserve that fresh peach taste into those colder months. So I would recommend, those are like really good ways to preserve peaches. There's other things that people might do, like maybe like a peach, like apple blend as like an applesauce, different ideas like that. Let's talk a little bit about zucchini, because I don't know about you, but people throw zucchinis at people this time of year. If you have anybody in your family or friend network that has a garden, most likely they're going to be giving you a zucchini or two, because they just grow so much on one plant. Like it just seems like they're constantly producing. Zucchini are high in water. They are low in calories. So a cup only has 17 calories. So they're good sources of different vitamins, potassium, magnesium. They have some fiber. We can do different things with zucchinis. So we could, some people like to shred them and just kind of like add them into dishes that they're cooking. That taste that they have is so mild that we can just kind of throw them into things. So maybe you're making like a casserole and you want to throw some shredded zucchini into that. Maybe like taco meat or something like that. That can kind of take some ground or some shredded zucchini too. We could freeze it We might put a couple pieces into a smoothie. Grilling zucchini is really nice. Slicing and just kind of like storing in a container for the winter in the freezer, again, is a really nice option. So a lot of different things we can do with those zucchinis that people might be tossing our way. All right, so let's talk about tomatoes. So they're just kind of starting to make their entry, at least into my area in Pennsylvania. I'm sure Delaware's like, I think, a lower zone. So you guys probably have a little bit better access to them right now. But again, tomatoes high in water. They have a good amount of vitamin C. Like we talked about the lycopene, they're a good source for that. Fiber, they're just a very versatile fruit where we can put them in salads, we can eat sauces, all, casseroles, all different sorts of things. One thing I like to do with extra tomatoes in the summer is freeze them too. I'm sure your freezer is going to be stuffed after you listen to my recommendations, but you can freeze tomatoes whole, which is super easy. Like just wash them and put them in a bag, like 4 or 6 to a bag, freeze them, and then thaw them in the fridge. And then you can add that into soups, stews, different dishes in the winter. You can also dice them and freeze them. You can obviously also like make sauce, all different sorts of things we can do with excess tomatoes in the summertime. Let's talk a little bit about outdoors, because this all kind of goes hand in hand with what's growing, right? So all this food that's amazing for us is growing outside this time of year. There's also obviously a lot of benefits for us to be spending some time outside. And when it's hot and humid, we might just pick different times of the day to get some of that outside time in. Maybe it's early morning, maybe it's evening, but trying to kind of get some of that in. Cooking and eating outdoors can give us some more opportunities to be outside. Also keeps our houses a little cooler without like running the ovens and everything inside. There's some research showing that people spending 120 minutes a week in nature reported good health and high well-being. So maybe kind of think about that, how you might break that down throughout the course of a week. Not too many minutes per day if we kind of look in terms of the whole week and trying to get up to 120 minutes. There's a book called 1,000 Hours Outside, I think, something like that. But it's a woman who made a conscious effort to spend 1,000 hours outside over the course of a year, and just kind of like how she did it and, what kind of benefits she found from doing that. Let's look at some grilling tips now. So we talked about grilling fruits. Obviously, grilling vegetables is another nice option. We can grill vegetables different ways. Like some people have those vegetable baskets that fit on their grills. Some people have kind of like those Blackstone grills where you can obviously do maybe like a saute or, kind of like a stir fry type of a mix. Some people make a little foil packet, do their vegetables in that. Kebabs can be a really nice way to do vegetables. So what I would recommend is if there's a meat involved, kind of like doing a little pre-cooking of that and then putting that on and cooking it right away. Just because, sometimes things are cooking at different paces. So if you're trying to cook a chunk of like chicken, but you have onions right next to it, like that chicken's going to cook up a lot slower than some of those vegetables would. Trying some plant-based entrees. So we obviously have the sides and the vegetables, like corn on the cob grills really well, but maybe also playing around with some bean burgers, some tofu. So tofu could work good on like a kebab. And that might be something you do a little bit of pre-cooking on as well. For animal protein, marinating. So really the goal So we know that when we cook animal protein, we do create some carcinogens with the hot temperatures of the grill. So some ways to kind of cut back on that a little bit would be to marinate that protein ahead of time in the fridge. So we always want to marinate in the refrigerator. We don't want to just have things sitting on the counter. And also starting cooking in another method, like maybe doing some boiling or something like that, and then popping it on the grill. So you have that flavor, but we're reducing the grill time a little bit. Add some rosemary. Rosemary has actually been shown to decrease the production of those carcinogens in the animal protein. That carcinogen is not created from plant protein. So like you're using tofu, bean burgers, there's no creation of that carcinogen with that process. Cooking outdoors. So it's not limited to grills, right? So grills is obviously what most people kind of have and go towards, but there's also like just like the simple like 1 burner propane tank burner. And on that, we can boil corn, we can steam veggies, clams, we can make sauce, all sorts of different things. We might make a soup or a chili on something like that. Okay. So summertime is also a really important time to be paying attention to food safety. And that's even more important if you're in the middle of treatment and you're having a decrease in your immune system. Picnics can sometimes be a little dicey depending on what the hosts are doing. I've talked to a couple people this summer that had some sort of food poisoning episode from a picnic they went to. So some things to just be aware of: keeping cold food cold until you're about to serve it. So some sort of maybe cooler, or keep it in the refrigerator before it's ready to go out. Avoiding cross-contamination. So when we're preparing our foods, keeping obviously like the raw chicken and raw meat and things like that away from anything that's already cooked or like a fresh fruit or vegetable. We want to wash produce well. So that's just under cool running water with friction. And that's usually enough to wash it well. When we're doing something like melons, just being a little extra careful and really rubbing all throughout the melons, especially something like cantaloupe, because cantaloupe kind of has those little divots where some of the bacteria can settle. So we never want to just grab a melon from the grocery store and slice right into it, because that's bringing some of that bacteria, whatever's on the outside of it, it's going to go inside to our fruit. We also don't want to allow for picnic foods to be in that temperature danger zone for more than 2 hours most days, or more than an hour when it's a really hot day, like over 90 degrees. So that temperature danger zone is between 40 and 140 degrees. And most picnic food will be in that range. So basically any picnics that you're at, try to get the food first. And then if you're going back for food later in the day, try to pick something that's not going to be a risk. So, if there's maybe something that's like a whole fruit, that would be a good option. Or, unfortunately, the desserts usually are still fine later in the day. Or maybe people are bringing out burgers that were kept cold to grill again or something like that. Not taking leftover picnic food home and putting it in the fridge, because that, again, it's been sitting out too long. Flies have been on it, all sorts of different things. And it's not going to be safe for us to just keep eating it for days. Washing our hands well is also super important, as always. For grilling, again, avoiding cross-contamination, marinating safely. So we're only going to marinate in the refrigerator. If pre-cooking, grill right after. So we want to, move it from the oven onto the grill, keep food hot. The other thing is safe thawing. So safe thawing is either in the fridge, in the microwave, or under cool running water. Just leaving things on the counter is not considered a safe defrosting method. And this is a little helpful. I feel it's always good to just kind of familiarize yourself with what internal temperature should be in foods that we're cooking. So it doesn't hurt to have a meat thermometer that we're using, we're checking when we're grilling burgers, check that, check the meat thermometer, make sure you're getting it to that proper temperature. So that's just something to think about. So let's talk about eating well in the summer and kind of what are some things that we can do. So having things prepped in the fridge. So we might look to have some salad ingredients kind of prepped. We might have, our lettuce. We might have some veggies already ready to go. We might have some like hard-boiled eggs if we want to put that on top of a salad, or maybe like some beans that we have like rinsed and drained that are kind of easy to grab in the fridge for a couple of days to add to our salads. We might have a dressing that we've made that we're keeping in there. Some whole grain, that we made, and that can be added to our salad. We might want some ingredients for grain bowls. So it'd be kind of similar, like you'd have a cooked grain in there. You might have some beans. Roasted vegetables can be nice on that. So we might keep some roasted veggies in the fridge or grilled vegetables. We might have a little bit of a dressing, something like that. So just kind of having easy to kind of combine ingredients in the fridge ready to go for meals. Things that we might want to keep in the freezer. So we might want to do some smoothie packs. So some people will kind of prepare what they might put in a smoothie minus the liquid and keep it all together in something in the freezer. So then it's easy to grab. We might have our fruit. We might have if we have some greens in there, peanut butter, ground flaxseed, kind of whatever we're throwing in. We might just have that all in a little container in the fridge. Then we can dump it into the blender, add our liquid, and we have our smoothie ready to go. We might have some frozen leftovers in portions. So we might have like a lunch-sized portion of some soup or a burrito or, something like that we can grab and heat up quickly. We might have frozen grains. So when I do, I'll make a big batch of like quinoa or barley, I'll put some in a bag and flatten it out and freeze it. And then you can kind of break off chunks as needed. We might also have some cooked and frozen beans. So we might make a bag of dried beans, go through the whole soaking and cooking it and all of that, and then kind of portioning it into can size portions and keeping that in the freezer. So a lot of different options for that. Let's look at some ready to eat foods in the pantry or cabinets. So we might do some low sodium beans in a can. Nuts and seeds are always great to have on hand. Shelf stable grains. So there's some different options with that. There's like I think it's like the minute rice. They have like a brown rice and quinoa cup. Something like that's nice to have on hand if you just kind of need something quick to go with like some beans or maybe something else that you're having that you want just like a little bit of a grain with. Stuffed grape leaves, if you've ever had them, they're kind of a nice thing to have on hand, and you can get cans of them. Some people like them with a salad. If you got invited to somebody's house, that can be kind of like a quick thing to grab to bring with you. That's easy. A lot of people like them, maybe even bringing some of them in like a jar of olives or something like that, putting them out if you're having anybody over. They can be really nice. Canned seafood or like in those pouches. So you can do like the wild salmon, the chunk light tuna, different things like that. Easy to grab and easy to use in recipes or, with a salad or on a sandwich, things like that. Some different recipes for websites that you can check out that have just different veggie, fruit recipes, summertime ideas, all of those things. Great. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can get into the last two recipes that we have. And before I start on the recipes, does anybody have questions on the content that we just covered? Okay. All right, well, first we'll make our watermelon drink. And I can get this plugged in. Hot grill out of here. For this, we're going to put 2 cups of watermelon in our blender cup. And I did measure this out already. So some nice fresh watermelon that I got to right away, which is pretty rare for me. It usually sits on the counter for a while and then gets into that like slightly soft phase. So it's nice to have a nice crisp watermelon. We're going to do, so about a tablespoon of lemon juice into this. I'm just going to take some of these seeds out. I'm going to squeeze it in. So usually half of a lemon has about 2 tablespoons. So I'm not going to get too crazy, but that's about a tablespoon or a little bit more. And then I'm just going to add my 1 cup of water. So this is an agua fresca recipe. So if you've ever, it's kind of a traditional like Mexican drink, agua fresca, that typically has a little bit of sugar added. This recipe doesn't. So it's a little bit different, but has kind of the same feel to it. So I'm going to mute this. And obviously that blends up super fast because watermelon is mostly water, right? And we're going to, some people like, you can leave the pulp in. I'm going to strain it out just to kind of show you how we're going to do that. This could also be a rehydration beverage with a tiny bit of salt added to it. But for our purposes, we're just making it just a regular, no salt added, just refreshing beverage. This can just be like a base for even like another type of drink. You could put a little soda in it if you want to make it a little bit bubbly. You could drink it as it is. You can mix it with a little bit of like tea if you'd like. A lot of different options for it. Now, when I did the trial run of this recipe, I used the frozen watermelon I had from, I don't even know when, hopefully like not too long ago. And that actually worked out really well. I had to let it sit a while. It was actually like a really nice frozen, like type of sorbet. So that was tasty. I just ate some of it frozen and then, you know, enjoyed the rest as that juice. Obviously, it takes a bit to kind of strain out this. I did also want to show you one thing that I had gotten. I think a little bit of this juice would be even nice with this. So this product is like called Bigelow Botanicals. It's a cold brew tea, and there are a lot of different versions of it. So that was really tasty and fun. It's a nice summer beverage. I think it's always important to kind of look for other options, especially if we're used to drinking, some type of alcohol at night. If we want to be cutting back on that, which is good for everybody to cut back. Different things. Sometimes just plain water gets a little boring. So kind of just playing around with different options for ourselves can be really helpful. You could also use cheesecloth to strain this. But as you can see, it's a really obviously nice color. And watermelon's not super high in fiber as it is, so we're not losing all that much by straining out this pulp. But again, you can leave it in as well. So you got the idea. I don't think you need to strain the whole thing, but we end up with a really nice beverage. And it makes about 2 cups when it's all said and done. Okay, maybe a little more, maybe about 2.5. Great. Let's rinse this. Now that my peaches have cooled a bit, I do want to show you how I would kind of put that together with everything. So let's grab a little plate. I'm just going to do about half a cup of the Greek yogurt. Our peach onto the side, and then we'll just do about 1/4 teaspoon drizzle of our warmed up honey. That's actually a little bit cooler now. So was a little warmer earlier, but you get the idea. And it's just enough honey, just a tiny 1/4 teaspoon to just give it some yummy honey flavor. And then you're going to have enough sweetness with the yogurt, with the peach and the yogurt. It's really tasty. All right, so now we'll move on to our final recipe, which is the quinoa salad that we have. I'm just going to pull up my recipe for that. So it's a quinoa cabbage salad. So I did cook my quinoa earlier and chilled it. I'm just going to prep my cabbage, quick washing it, and then we'll chop that. So you can either do a whole cabbage, you could do green cabbage if you have that on hand, or as you've probably seen at the store, we can typically find the purple cabbage shredded already. So we're going to do about 1/4 of this cabbage. And that's going to be about a cup of cabbage for this salad. I'm going to start putting the ingredients right into a container. So this is a really fresh salad, and I love the way we can incorporate in some whole grain in the quinoa. We've got veggies, we've got healthy fat in the almonds, we have some beans and extra fiber. So it's a really nice salad that you can keep in the fridge for like 3 to 4 days and just enjoy it. I think it would be a great thing to take to picnics too. And again, this time of year, cabbage is growing. If you have somebody that's giving you cabbage, or I know like if you're in a CSA, we'll typically get a head of cabbage at some point. Sometimes it will be just like a giant head of cabbage. So this can be a good way to just utilize some of it. Okay. So we're going to add our cabbage. All right, and now we'll so I have some edamame. Typically I can buy it shelled already, but I had to buy it whole. And so I've just been kind of like shelling it myself. So I have about a half cup, which is all I'm gonna put in for time purposes for the class. And edamame works well. I feel like you could also get away with like lima beans in the salad. I don't feel like it's a like black bean or chickpea. I don't feel like that's the right feel for the salad. I feel like edamame is a really good option. If you're not familiar with edamame, it's basically immature soybeans. So it's fresh. It can be a really nice snack too if you've never had it before. You can, when you eat it, you're going to pop the beans out of the pods. You're not going to eat the pods because they are pretty rough and harder to digest. Okay, so we have that. We're going to put in a cup of cooked quinoa. So I just made this in my rice cooker. Very easy though to make quinoa on the stove as well. So we're going to do a cup of that. And if you're doing more, if you're having people over, if you're going somewhere, you can double this recipe and it still works very well. I'm going to do a half cup of shredded carrots. Now, carrots are something you can obviously shred on your own, but I do think sometimes it's nice to buy them pre-shredded. Especially when I'm teaching a class, I'm always at risk of shredding my finger when I'm trying to shred and talk. So I think this is a little safer for me. That we're going to do a half cup of chopped and roasted almonds. So let me grab those real quick. I've also made this salad with cashews, and that's been really nice too. I do think the crunch of the almonds is really nice, especially the roasted. They maintain that texture, whereas the cashews kind of get softer and absorb the liquid in the salad, but they're still very good. Okay, so we have our half cup. I'm just gonna chop them. Also use like slivered almonds, if you don't want to go through the process of chopping them. Add these. And then we're going to do about a 1/4 cup of cilantro. Now that's optional. I know that some people don't like the flavor of cilantro. It's like a gene thing. Like some people just think it tastes like soap and it's just always going to taste like soap to them. So I am thankfully not that type of taste palette. So I'm going to put that in here. But yeah, if you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. It's not, there's kind of nothing in the middle. I'm sure you could pop some different herbs in here too, like a little bit of parsley or something like that, if you want to just add a little bit of that green color. It's a very colorful salad. Okay. This over here. So look how pretty this is already. It's such a pretty salad. So now we're going to make the dressing. And we're going to start with a tablespoon of white vinegar. We're going to put the yogurt in last. So we'll kind of mix this up with the oils and different things, and then we'll put the yogurt in last. And the yogurt just gives it a little bit of a creamy texture. But you don't need to add it. If you don't have it on hand or you don't like it, it's totally fine without it. And then we're going to do 2 teaspoons of olive oil, and then we're going to do 2 teaspoons of sesame oil. Now, sesame oil can be a little bit pricey, but if you don't have it on hand, it would be okay without it, but it does add a really nice flavor to the salad if you're able to get your hands on some. So we're going to do 2 teaspoons of olive oil. And then we'll do 1 of the sesame oil. And a little bit of sesame oil goes a long way. So it's really nice, even for a little bit of stir fry or something like that, just adding a little bit, the flavor is very strong. Okay, now we're going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of maple syrup. You could also use honey or sugar. And we'll just add a little bit of salt and pepper, and then we'll mix in that Greek yogurt at the end. We'll do a 1/4 teaspoon each of salt and pepper. And I always pour my salt in an area that's not over top of what I'm doing, just for risk of me accidentally dumping it into my dish. Just like that. All right, so now we're going to do a stir of this before we add the Greek yogurt. And if you feel like this recipe is a little dry, you could always add a little bit more to your salad. Surprisingly, this specific blend does not take much to kind of give it the flavor of the dressing. Okay, we're going to do our tablespoon of Greek yogurt. Again, that just adds a creamy texture to it. Smells so good. That sesame oil really has a nice smell to it. We're just going to pour it on top. Just give it a nice little stir. It's just enough to kind of flavor it. But again, you could always use like double your dressing recipe if you find that it's a little on the dry side for you. All right, so we have our salad, we have our peaches, we have our yummy watermelon agua fresca, and our pretty salad. Does anybody have any questions on anything?
So I'm curious how long the salad will keep in the fridge.
Yeah, so something like this, usually about 3 days is a safe time for it to be in there. Sometimes like 3 to 4. When I actually was doing my trials of this, I actually was eating it for breakfast. I found it was like, I kind of like savory breakfasts sometimes. And this was a really nice, just because it had like, you know, the grain, the beans, the nuts. It was actually a really nice little breakfast dish.
Great.
Yeah. And this would be also really nice against like a grilled veggie burger or, you know, kebabs or something like that. Something really quick and easy. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Great. Well, thanks for joining. And our next one is August, right? And forget our what were we doing in August?
We are, I think it's August 28th, and
I know I'm trying to
plant
remember.
forward
That's
eating,
right.
maybe.
Hard eating. So we'll focus in a little bit more kind of throughout all of these talks. We've been talking a lot about more like plant forward foods and meals, but we'll kind of hone in a little bit more on that in that August session. Great.